Right then, you lovely lot, it's floats time, and what I want to do with this one is break it down into 3 different areas. First, we're going to go through the different kinds of bristles, then we're going to go through the bodies of the floats, and then we're going to go through the stems of the floats. Dead simple, folks. So first things first, let's go through bristles. So what you'll see here is 3 different bristles that will cover pretty much all of my fishing. We've got a right fine one here, which is a solid bristle for the likes of this time of year when it's really cold. These aren't the best when you get that awkward light, when it's really sunny, but you've got it sort of like broken up into shadows. So that's when you come on to hollow bristles, which we've got here. Perfect for when there's a bit of sun, because obviously the sunlight beams through that bristle. It makes you see, obviously, to see the float better. And then when we get into warm weather, eventually when the warm weather arrives, folks, that's when you come on to thicker bristles like this one. So we've got a 2mm, a 1.5mm, and then a 1.2. 1.2, as I say, solid, and then these 2 are hollow. Nothing complicated with that, so that's the bristles explained. Next thing we'll go through is the bodies of the floats. Now, probably for 90% of my fishing, if not more, I'm going to be using a bodied float similar to this, like the old style Chianti. It just does absolutely everything for me that I want it to do. It's lovely and slender, so when you get a bite, you're straight into the fish, not much resistance there. When you're holding that float on a tight line, it's going to fall through the water, lovely, so you can see, bites on the drop. But more importantly, it's just the fact that body, the trouble you've got with it is when it gets a little bit windier or the depth goes, I want to say, more than 7 foot, it's not as stable as what these next 2 would be that I'll show you. But as I said, for 90% of your fishing, other than when it's really windy and really deep, that particular float is what you'll be using, like the old style Chianti. Next one we're going to come on to is sort of one in between, which is a diamond shaped float. Now, it's got the properties, or similar properties to obviously the Chianti shape of float, and it's a little bit longer body, but it's much more stable. Because of the body of the float, you've got something to hold back again on this shoulder here. So I quite happily use that in deeper water, or when there's a bit of wind on the water. But it's not as stable as a float that has that kind of body, which is your traditional rugby shape of float. This is what you'll see is used in the heights of summer, in a real compact form with a thick bristle on, fishing on the mud line or in the margins, because it's so stable, folks. Honestly, for like all your deep water fishing or like your margin and cross fishing, always use a rugby ball shaped float, because when you're holding back on that, it's not towing through the water or anything like that. So them are the bodies explained. The next thing we'll go through is the stems of the float. So we'll go through this one first. So as you can see, this wire stem. Now, wire stem for me is for when you're fishing in sort of towy, windy water, rivers, anything like that, where you want to get your bait down quick. It's just very stable, basically. So when you're laying that rig in, the float will instantly want to do that, want to sink. So it's very good, as I say, if you've got windy conditions, a bit of tow in the water, always go for a wire stem float. Not so good in the heights of summer, because it can bend out, when you're getting these big wobbly carps and that, it can bend out. So that's when you go to a kind of hybrid float, which is a glass stem. So this has got similar properties to carbon and similar properties to wire, I suppose, in that the glass stem is quite heavy like a wire, but obviously it will follow your bait through the water like a carbon float would. But again, very stable, and that's when you'd use that float in the heights of summer, and it doesn't bend out. So we wouldn't necessarily use that this time of year, because it's not sensitive enough like that you get from a wire or a carbon. So keep these for the summer when there's a bit of tow on the water, or you want that bait nice and stable in your shallow water. And then the final one, which again, 90% of my fishing folks, is done with this float and that stem, a carbon stem. The beauty of a carbon stem, it just does what you want. It follows your bait down, so imagine holding a tight line to that, and your shot's nice and spread, it's following that bait down all the way. Again, when you've got like a bit of tow on the water, they become redundant. That's when you go into either a glass if the weather's suitable, you've got warmer conditions, or wire if it's a little bit colder. And that's it to the float, for the floats. You know, I don't want to complicate it too much. Hopefully it's a right good insight for you. And that's Floats Explained. Just a little quick one. We have got brand new merch in stock. We've got new caps, new hoodies and new t-shirts. Visit www.winningways.shop.com.co.uk.